Also, I think it's important just to recognize that this is the third of what we call Blacks in Dialogue. It's a program of our movement, Black First, Land First. So we're trying to get black people to think through some of the questions that are confronting us in society. The first two conversations were around the issue of the media and state capture, and then we also discussed the challenges faced by a black business. As I understand it, today we're discussing the topic of why must APSA pay back the money. Earlier today, we had a nationwide picket. Our movement picketed 50 outlets of APSA. And I want to say this, that our movement is a small movement. Some people call us a stock fell. Our opponents, that's what they say, we are a stock fell. But for us to be able to call all our structures throughout the country to come out on a particular day to demonstrate, to picket, and most of them have done so, it shows that our movement is beginning to take shape. So we're very happy about that. We keep on explaining to our opponents as well that we're picketing today. Today, a picket in the South African law is when you are 15 and less. And when you demonstrate as that number, you don't have to seek permission. I hope people know this. You don't have to go to any police. You don't have to notify them even. 15 of you or less, you can at any time demonstrate. But we were smart. We say a picket, so we have 15 people everywhere. So we don't have to go to the police and go through the whole difficult process. Well, we did not today as BLF go to APSA to shut it down, but some comrades got a bit carried away, right? So when they were there picketing, they got tired of picketing and holding placards. So they decided to go inside. So as a result, we have this situation where at least 5 APSA branches were shut down completely as a result of the. That's very nice, I think. Yeah, I don't, in my mind, I don't necessarily think of Polokwane people to be militants, but to be militant. But they were the first to shut down APSA. There 2 branches there in Polokwane. And then we had 2 here in Joburg and 1 in Polokwane, there are 2, 1 in Tshwane, and there are 2 here in Johannesburg as well. Now, let me just talk a little bit about our movement. Black First, Land First is a Pan-Africanist and a Black consciousness movement. The main objective is to defeat settler colonialism and usher into a socialist Tanzania. We read the situation that the most important battle today is the battle of anti-imperialism. And we understand anti-imperialism as represented by global capitalism or London. If you want to understand global capitalism, just imagine London. That is the headquarters. Brussels is okay, no problem, but London is particularly for settler societies in Southern Africa. So now we're colonized by London. I'm shocked. People talk about China. Somebody who's doing a study on China and Europe. London has the biggest control of mineral resources in the African continent. Still, it's not the Chinese. The Chinese are only beginning. London. Just stay away from it if you can. Now, this global capitalism find expression in South Africa in what we call settler monopoly capital. Now, we concretize that by saying Johann Rupert, the Oppenheimers, those who own our land, own our mines, and own our wealth. It's very important conceptually to understand that in this moment of anti-imperialist struggle, Europe, and in particular London, is important. But that enemy finds concrete expression in our space. And here, as what we will call settler monopoly capital, some people just call it white. I'll try to deal with this concept a little bit. So the fundamental contradiction in South Africa remains white supremacy, which is about the totality of white power. It's very important. The totality of white power. In the economic sphere, this is expressed as what we've just called white monopoly capital or settler monopoly capital. It's important, I think, conceptually to be clear. White power is total, and I'll talk about this just now. But when we talk about white monopoly capital, we're specifically expressing this power in the economic sphere. But we will just now hear that this power is actually total. But white power is hegemonic. White power makes the political power held by the ANC superfluous. In other words, the political power held by the ANC is empty power. The ANC cannot do as it wishes. The ANC can only do that which is approved by white monopoly capital. We saw December 2015, when President Zuma tried to appoint a minister he wanted in Treasury. He was quickly forced to beat a retreat. Now the president himself last December said it is on public record. He says, when I appointed the minister that I wanted, white capital put pressure on me to change my decision, and no one defended me. That's what the president of the country says. If you have any doubts about the emptiness of this political power held by the ANC, maybe you need to just carefully look at what has happened to Msholozi. How he's been vilified, he's been made to look like he is the problem in the country. And I'll talk about how that is possible. Well, we often laugh at the ANC. Some of us from the consciousness movement, I myself used to make this joke about the ANC behave like an NGO. You know, I mean, the ANC is in power, but it behaved. I mean, have you seen how the ANC complains? You often get the sense, who is in power here? Even my friend Jimmy Manyi, he has to start an NGO to say certain things. That man is a senior leader of the ANC. But as an ANC leader, you can't say those things. So you start an NGO, we call it decolonizing something, and in this way. Yes, because you can say that. So the truth of the matter is that the ANC is a eunuch. You know, like when they castrate people. So I mean, there's you can't expect productivity from such a. Now, this observation is very important because we often make the mistake of saying the ANC has got political power, but this is not true. We need to think thoroughly and carefully, because real political power emanates from economic power. This is true, and this truth rather is upheld even by Marxist theory, or Marxists in the house will know the idea of the base and superstructure, how the economic base determines the superstructure which is the politics, which is the ideology, which is culture, which is the narratives, which is meaning making. Those who control the economic base determine what happens in the superstructure. And the superstructure is the laws as well. The whole legal framework is determined ultimately by the interests of those who hold the base, the economic base. So what this means is that the ANC hold onto the levers of the state is dangerous if the state is not seen as one instance of the struggle to overthrow the real ruling class, which is the economic class. We have to update our discourse. This idea of calling the ANC a ruling class is wrong. The ANC is just, because of his position as a party in government, it is just the managers, The real ruling class is the class that owns the economy. That is the ruling class. Of course, bad sociology from VETS and other places these days, university students, they call the ANC the ruling class, or something like this. So there is no longer proper theory. The students are not being taught a theory anymore. That is why it's easy then to say the ANC is the enemy. Because if you say the ANC is the ruling class, then of course you must defeat the ruling class. Uh, and then, of course, what we're saying that in South Africa, we know that white supremacy is more than than the economy. It is, but however, the economy is the central plank of power. What this means is that anyone who assumes political office without understanding its subordinate actual position in relation to the economic base is likely to harm us than to serve us. Even if we bring BLF into power, if BLF now runs the Johannesburg Metro but does not know that the real power rests with those who hold the economic power, we're going to end up shooting you and killing you when you make small demands from the ruling class. See, you become like Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa owns about 10% of Lone Min. But he's able, when our brothers were protesting there, to call the state to come and kill us. Now, politics can only work for blacks if they are rebellious. In the South African situation, political power held by blacks to be able to serve us has to be revolutionary. It has to be transgressive, and finally, and the most importantly, it has to be unconstitutional. For us as black people, for political power to work for us, it has to be transgressive. In other words, we must break the constitutional project. And I think this concept of being unconstitutional is absolutely important, but these people must finish this thing they are doing. Or they must remove the thing completely.